Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to Rock Video Rental. We are continuing on with our Halloween marathon, and today we are talking about Frankenstein from 1931. It is directed by James Whale, and the plot for this one is Dr. Frankenstein dares to tamper with life and death by creating a human monster out of lifeless body parts. Cast for this, we got Colin Clive as Henry Frankenstein, Mae Clark as Elizabeth, Boris Karloff as the monster, John Bowles as Victor Mortis, Edward Van Sloan as Dr. Waldman, Frederick Kerr as Baron Frankenstein, and Dwight Fry as Fritz. It's been a little while since I've watched this movie. How about you?
This is a first for me.
What?
Yeah, I mean, like I've seen different parts online, around Halloween on TV and stuff.
Yeah.
But I've definitely not watched the whole thing all the way through. So,
I'm kind of similar to that. This is one of my dad's favorite movies, so we've watched it quite a few times. I remember renting it and watching it. Uh, I think we even had it taped off TV at one point. But yeah, I've definitely seen the bits and pieces quite a few times, but I've seen it all the way through maybe like 3 times,
okay.
maybe four, something like that. I do own it. I own on CED, and that's it. Kind of random, but the disc I have is pretty amazing. Like I watched the whole thing, and it didn't skip once, which is like an incredible anomaly for that format. But yeah, I mean, there's actually a quote on the CED like caddy itself, and it says, uh, "Probably the most well-known horror movie of all time." And I was trying to think of anything else, and I can't think of anything that's more known than Frankenstein.
I would have to, I mean, I agree with that. I probably would say Dracula would be the only thing that might contend it.
Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of as well.
Yeah, but I mean, who's to know for sure? So, um, man, but totally forgot. Um, I mean, we're getting into the classics here and seeing some of those. Man, what do they call them? Like the grandfathers of horror, or there's a term, but Boris Karloff is one of them.
Oh yeah,
The founding fathers of horror.
yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah, some kind of term like that, and I totally forgot that he played the monster. But man, dude, I don't know. I mean, I feel like this shouldn't shock me, but I went and looking at the cast list on IMDb, and then I clicked on Boris Karloff. Dude, he was born in 1887.
Well, this movie came out in 1931.
I know, but just thinking about that, where I'm just like, man, that's like without a doubt the earliest anyone's been born that I've clicked on for an actor. No.
You didn't click on anybody for Nosferatu?
No, I didn't. Well, I mean, like, I didn't really know any of them, so I was just kind of like, "Eh, eh."
Yeah.
But then I was like, "Oh yeah, Boris Karloff," and then I was like, "Oh my gosh," I mean, it totally makes sense. They had to be born before 1900, but
Yeah, and I think Karloff was doing movies until like what, early 70s maybe or late 60s.
yeah, it was early 70s.
Yeah,
And he
that's
and
crazy.
or actually no, I'm sorry. Sorry. They came out in the early 70s. He did pass away in 69, but
Oh, okay.
a few movies came out.
69, dude. Bill and Ted.
Uh, I do kind of taking a couple steps back on you saying that this is one of your dad's favorite movies. This was quite thoroughly entertaining.
Yeah.
Because they did such a great job with the length of the movie.
Hmm.
Like they did not waste any time. I mean, there were certainly slow parts. I mean, it I don't know that there were any films coming out this time that were just like nonstop action, but they basically cut down on the BS, and I mean, it started right off from the beginning, and it captured me and kept me enthralled throughout the whole time. Where some of these other older movies that we've gone through, especially kind of Nosferatu, I think is probably the biggest one so far, where it's just kind of
Yeah.
like they're slowly developing things and they're like trying to emphasize something through the filming, and it's slow, builds up slowly. This just was steadily plowing through the plot and took you right through until the end.
Well, I mean, it's a brisk hour and 10 minutes long.
Yeah.
Very brisk. I'm gonna say that this is probably easily the shortest movie that we've ever reviewed, and will likely be the shortest movie we ever review.
Yeah.
The only other movie I can think of that was like a wide release movie that has that short of a runtime is Never Ending, or not Ever Ending Story, Land Before Time. When's the
Okay.
last time you've watched that?
Oh my gosh, man. 1990 something.
Because that one I believe is like an hour and 10 minutes as well.
Okay.
I never realized how short it was until I watched it as an adult because my
Hmm.
daughter wanted to watch it. But yeah, it's an hour and 9 minutes. But yeah, this is the first one in this marathon that I like thoroughly was entertained by and like actively watching the whole time.
Yeah.
Um, just there's so many things in it that were like groundbreaking. Um, some of like the shots, I mean, the look of the monster is incredible,
Yeah.
especially for the time, and the suspense in it. I mean that the whole ending scene is one of the greatest endings in horror movie history with the windmill on fire. Just
Hmm.
even just the looks of that is awesome.
Yeah, that was very well done. So,
I know when we usually do these movies, we like to talk about what was good, what was great, and what was bad. I'm having a hard time thinking of anything that was really bad, except for maybe it's kind of short. Is the only thing I can think of.
I can tell you one thing. I do agree with you. I don't think there's much that you can walk away on saying bad, but there's one thing, and actually I might have to have your help to sort it out because it confused me so much. After Frankenstein's monster was killed,
Mhm.
what the heck was that ending? Like so Frankenstein's monster goes down in a burning blaze in the windmill,
Yeah.
and then they go to a scene where Frankenstein, the son, the scientist, is laying in bed in a room. I believe from what I could tell, because the camera was outside of it. His dad comes out, and all the maids or servants are, servant women are there with a cup of wine, and then his dad drinks a glass of wine and says something, and that's the end of the movie.
Right.
Uh,
It kind
yeah,
of goes with our common thing we find where they have a great ending to a movie and they just don't know how to end it.
yeah.
They could just kind of piss it away because I mean the end with the windmill on fire is just like such an amazing visual. And,
Hmm.
you know, and the monster screaming and flailing and everything like that would have just been perfect.
Yeah, no, like that's what I was expecting, and then that other scene came, and I actually I was meaning to, because I actually just watched this last night, and I was meaning before we recorded to watch that again to try to hear more clearly what his dad said,
Hmm.
because I didn't catch it last night. What do you know what he said?
Oh, not off the top of my head now.
It was something weird, random, like a whim, just like he said something in a whim, and it was nothing meaningful or deep, and I didn't catch the whole thing, and I was just like, wait, that was it?
He said Crocodile Dundee Part 2 really holds up. Which I don't know if he caught that, but that's what Marshall's dad said to him on How I Met Your Mother, that voicemail he left
Yeah, I do
after he
remember
passed away.
that.
Yeah, that Marshall didn't notice until after he passed away.
Well, like, I mean, If they went on, so again, like this is a little bit on the nitpicky side, but truthfully, outside of this one part that I'm getting picky about, I don't believe I have anything else really to say on the side of negative. But they, if they decided to go take the ending past the monster dying, they could have maybe done some closure, like did the Dr. Frankenstein die? Did his fiance die? You know, what happened to them? No closure, no nothing.
Yeah.
Like it was, again, as you said, something that can be quite classic with horror movies on where they don't know how to end their movie.
Yeah, I looked up what happens at the end. So it says the monster hurls uh, Frankenstein to the ground. His fall's broken by the vanes of the windmill.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then some villagers take him home while the mob sets the windmill on fire, like we talked about, and he's trapped inside.
Yep.
So then it's at Castle Frankenstein where Henry Frankenstein's father celebrates the wedding of his recovered son with a toast to his future grandchild.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that did not make sense. Like he took a toast, but there was, yeah, the context was there and the delivery was not very good. I think the audio was kind of tough to hear at that point too.
Yeah, I mean that's common too for movies of this era.
Yeah.
Another thing I would say that may be closer to the not so great side is the lack of music. But I mean that comes with early quote unquote talkies.
Mm-hmm.
As we talked about it too with Dracula. How there's a
Yeah.
lot of dead um air, but there's not as much in Frankenstein.
Yeah. That um if we had watched this first before Dracula, I would have probably emphasized that more. But since we
Hmm.
had Dracula for context, this was evidently better.
Oh yeah,
So
and we
certainly
even
not
watched the
perfect.
Spanish Dracula too,
Yeah.
and not the Carl or the Lugosi one,
Hmm.
which also has a lot of dead air in it as well. Things that worked great in this. Colin Clive as Henry Frankenstein was awesome.
Does
Like he went for it.
yeah. No, he did good. Does he kind of make you think of anyone with the way that he looks?
um, Not off the top of my head. What do you got?
I mean, I kind of thought it when I saw him in the movie, but especially when because I've got the cast list here pulled up on IMDb, so they have everybody's pictures. I feel like he looks like he could be the lesser known brother of Sean Connery.
Yes.
Here, it's definitely a bit of a stretch. Of course, like their ages don't match up properly, but or I don't believe so, but yeah, it just kind of the the hair, the look, the eyes.
Yeah, he looks like it could be the brother of a young Sean Connery.
Yeah.
That's pretty hilarious. I never thought about that. Another one. I mean, Karloff obviously did a great job. You know,
Hmm.
no real spoken lines, just kind of grunting, but the subtle acting, like his physical acting, um, the way he's able to emote behind a lot of makeup and a character that doesn't speak was
Hmm.
pretty impressive. Um, and Dwight Fry is Fritz, who it's funny the way this movie has become like so popular and how people look back on it, how they refer to the monster as Frankenstein,
Yep.
which he's not Frankenstein, he's just a monster, and how everybody thinks that Dr. Frankenstein's assistant's name is Igor, but that doesn't happen till like a sequel or something like that. Whereas
Yeah.
his assistant, the hunchback, is Fritz.
Yeah, I did not pick up on that. I mean,
Yeah.
I did often have to remind myself that okay, Frankenstein is not the monster, it's the doctor's name.
Yeah.
When I was younger. until I finally got ingrained in myself. But yeah, I did not pick up as much on the detail of his assistant. So
I believe in a few sequels they refer to the monster as Frankenstein.
okay.
So that's probably where some of the confusion came in. Plus, I mean, the poster has a huge picture of Karloff's face and it says Frankenstein above it.
Hmm.
But I don't know. Let's see. Favorite scenes, quotes,
Oh,
any kind of interesting thoughts?
well, obviously you've got your classic "It's Alive"
Mm-hmm.
moments that you see used all over the place. But easily my favorite scene, and this was I know that I've caught part of it before when it was on TV, so I was familiar with it beforehand. But when he plays with that little girl,
Yeah.
and man, dude, like they went there, dude. They went
Mm-hmm.
there when modern day horror movies don't go there. They
Yeah.
killed a kid.
Yeah, that's one of the most famous scenes in this movie, and it was actually cut for a while. Did you know that?
Does not surprise me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it I could not remember because I remembered that he plays with a little girl, but I could not remember if he hurt her or killed her or if the dad came back and like freaked out on him. But there is a little bit of that plot hole
Mm-hmm.
where he kills her by accident, then he runs away, then the dad comes home and automatically knows that the monster killed her.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, that's not that horrible.
Right. Yeah, I believe the part where he throws her in the water uh was cut for a while,
Hmm.
if I remember correctly. And I don't remember I didn't get to see that part on my CED when I watched it. If it was cut from that because I think when I had it on, like my daughter walked in the room or something like that and distracted me.
Okay.
Which I mean, this movie is tame enough that I just left it on,
Yeah.
and she wasn't paying attention. She was watching My Little Pony anyway. But yeah, I just left it on, and I missed that part, so I'm not sure if it's on my disc or not. But I will say one of the scenes that I kind of laughed at was towards the beginning where they're trying to get a brain, and Fritz goes into that like the laboratory after that presentation
Mm-hmm.
to like steal a brain, and they have it like labeled normal brain and abnormal brain. Well, he grabs the normal one and a sound like startles him and he drops it, and
Uh-huh.
it's like in a glass jar and it shatters. So that he like panics, grabs the abnormal one and runs off. And I'm thinking like, Fritz, why didn't you just like take the abnormal brain out and put the normal brain in the jar
Yeah.
and run off?
Well, he didn't exactly come across as the most bright assistant, so
Yeah, then that's totally on Frankenstein for sending him over there.
yeah.
It's just like it reminded me of like a Three Stooges episode where it's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, we need a brain for our monster. We need someone to get it. It's like, well, I met these three guys and I think they're fully capable.
Oh man.
We just hired these three new guys and everything's gonna be okay.
Well, actually, speaking more about Fritz does make me think, and it's interesting because I appreciate films because there are obvious things that they try to communicate and convey through their films, and then other times there are things that people pick up on that maybe were not completely intentional.
Hmm.
Um, but I I felt it was deliberate, and so I don't know if maybe in some of the things of your little facts and everything, if it comes up, but I felt like it was deliberate that they had Fritz taunting the monster because Fritz himself in normal circumstances, Fritz would be viewed as unusual, peculiar, monster-esque
Yeah.
because he's hunched back, he's creepy, let's face it, and unusual.
Hmm.
And so it seemed like he recognized the opportunity where, hey, I'm not the lowest man on the totem pole. this thing is beneath me. I'm going to treat it as such. And I could be wrong, but it just seemed like there were certain times there were maybe an accident on how he would spook it and scare it, but then you could tell he was deliberately like taunting it and treating it badly. And so I felt like he was doing it on purpose because he finally had an opportunity to feel superior to someone else.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a good point. I think I've heard that somewhere where somebody else said that.
Yeah, it's
So
it's one of
you're
those
not alone in that sentiment.
yeah, it's one of those things where cuz I laugh at certain things at different points where some people are like, "Oh, the person who did this is so amazing. They're so deep in everything." And it's just like, there's a very good chance that they didn't even intend for that and you're just picking up on something that wasn't there. I mean, that's
Right.
what's cool about film or art or music. You can find something extra, but when they claim, oh, they knew what they were doing, it's like,
It's kind of like in Stranger Things season 4 where they're at the roller rink and everybody watching it realized that it was happening on Will's birthday and no one said anything. But
exactly.
then the Duffer Brothers are just like, "Oh, we didn't even realize it."
Exactly. Where sometimes they do something unintentionally and then other people pick up on it and think like, "Oh my gosh, this means so much. It's so deep."
Exactly. But anything else to talk about with it? You want me to get in trivia?
Um the one other scene just to touch on that is kind of class. Well, kind of two things real quick and then we can get into the trivia and everything. The very beginning was funny because the whole thing of being like, warning, this is a disturbing video or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, welcome to 2022. um but the other part was when Frankenstein's monster woke up and choked Dr. Waldman.
Hmm.
That was pretty cool. I mean, I totally could see that back in the day, spooking people or, being a kid watching an old black and white movie, probably giving you a decent scare. So I enjoyed that scene too.
Rock.
All right, facts and trivia.
Let's roll. So during the production, there was some concern that 7-year-old Marilyn Harris, who played Maria, the little girl thrown in the lake by the monster,
Mhm.
that she would be overly frightened by the sight of Karloff in costume and makeup. But when it came time to shoot the scene, when the cast was assembled to travel to the location, Harris like ran from her car directly to Karloff, who was in full makeup and costume, took his hand and asked, "May I drive with you?" Um, Delighted and in typical Karloff fashion, he responded, "Would you please?" She then drove to the location with the monster, like in makeup. So they were worried about it, and she didn't even care.
Nice.
So a microphone was placed in the coffin used at the funeral scene to amplify the sound of grave dirt hitting the lid,
Mm,
which was pretty smart.
yeah, no, good job on the sounds team.
So the iconic monster makeup done by Jack P. Pierce is actually under copyright to Universal through the year 2026 and licensed by Universal Studios Licensing.
Wow,
So
that's
that's
coming up.
why when you watch other Frankenstein movies, they don't look, the monster never looks like the Universal one.
Interesting. Well, just wait, 2027, here we come.
Right. After bringing the monster to life, Dr. Frankenstein uttered the famous line, "Now I know what it's like to be God." The movie was originally released with the line of dialogue, but then it was re-released in the late 30s, censored, um, so that it would remove that on the grounds that it was blasphemous.
Hmm.
They actually added a loud clap of thunder to the soundtrack. The dialogue was partially restored in a video release, but since no distinct recording of the dialogue could be found, it appears garbled and indistinct. The censored dialogue was partially returned to the soundtrack in the initial restored version. Future restoration has now completely brought back this missing line of dialogue. A clean recording of the missing dialogue was found on something called a Vitaphone disc, which is similar to a large record.
Okay.
Modern audio technology was used to reinsert the dialogue into the film without a detectable change in the audio quality.
Oh, nice.
With the restoration, it is known that he says, "Now that I know what it feels like to be God."
Rock.
So, you talked about Karloff's age. He was actually 44 when this movie premiered, and it was his debut movie.
What?
Yeah. So he was a bit of a late bloomer. A little bit about the costume. His shoes actually weighed 13 pounds each.
Holy smokes. Dude, I noticed that those things were huge.
Yeah. Apparently, there were some kind of special shoes that um, construction workers that worked in blacktop wore at the time.
Hmm.
So to help, like, keep their feet from getting burnt and stuff. And we always get into casting what ifs, but Bela Lugosi actually turned down the role of the monster
Okay.
because he didn't want to have a role where it was just him grunting. And throughout the years, him and Karloff kind of had a rivalry where Lugosi pretty much disliked Karloff and thought he was a terrible actor.
Hmm.
And that his role as like the monster didn't have like any quality with it because he was just grunting and groaning the whole time.
Hmm.
Which is hilarious because Lugosi went on to play the monster in one of the movies in the series. I can't remember which one it is.
Nice.
Yeah. And the last thing I got is the movie had a $262,000 budget and it made $12 million in the box office.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, $12 million in 1931.
Dang. What? And that was 260 what?
262,000. I'm not sure if that was adjusted for inflation, like the box office. I feel like it would have to be
Yeah,
in 1931. Like, yeah,
that's crazy.
yeah. So let's get into the grades. Pulled from IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes. What do you think those are?
IMDb 7.8.
It's exactly what it is.
Yes. I'm looking at the grades for the other classic movies, horror movies we've done.
Yeah.
So I figured it wasn't quite a Nosferatu score. So I had a little assistance there to at least get in the ballpark. Rotten Tomato critic 98%.
100.
Ah, dang it. Audience 90%.
87.
Okay.
Then I'll let you go first. What's your grade for it?
I was very happy with this one. So this is the third in our series.
Hmm.
I've yet to give a 5 out of 5 for these classic horror movies. But this is going to be the first. Man, it is very impressive for a movie from the 1930s to be, as we mentioned before, thoroughly entertaining. For nowadays, nothing huge and groundbreaking and shattering your perspective and imagination, but just that you're able to sit through, again, a huge component that I think assisted that is the fact that the length wasn't too long. And they, man, I don't know if it was their priority or not, but it seemed like they prioritized, let's just move from one thing to the next. Let's not do a ton of development. Let's
Hmm.
not uh fart around with things. Let's just be straightforward, not cut straight and dry, but like they I they nailed it. Like I said, the only real complaint was the ending being not as clearly defined as it could have been. But for a movie of this nature, to have that being really what I consider its only flaw, easily 5 out of 5. Great performances. I'm you mentioning the details of the sound effects and the audio that they worked on.
Yep.
Just really fantastic. And um, even though it was not the last thing, the death of the monster in the windmill, the the fact that it was like barely seconds after that the movie ended,
Hmm.
still just gave it a strong finish. So yeah, easy 5 out of 5.
Yeah, I totally agree. I give it a 5 out of 5 as well. I think it is the best of the Universal monster movies.
Hmm.
Dracula's great too, but it's a little slower than this. Um, I like, just like what you said, I like the pace of this. The fact that it's just a little over an hour it's fine with me. I mean, they could have added some more, but uh, we might have some slow parts then. And like I said, I like how it moves along at a brisk pace. The acting's great. It's really innovative for its time. Um, and not really like movies of this time. It's hard to look at back at them and see them as scary, but they definitely have some atmosphere. And I don't know, just like the camera work for the time is really impressive. I don't, it's just one of those movies, and I do agree that, like I said on the back of my disc, that it is the most famous horror movie of all time. Like I kind of agree with that because you could see the picture of Karloff as the monster and know that it's Frankenstein.
Hmm.
Yeah, the whole ending scene with the windmill on fire is just an iconic image. The scene where he grabs a little girl and throws her in the pond was like super effective. And yeah, like you said, it's just something that they don't even really do now with like killing children.
Hmm.
But and at the same time too, like the monster comes off as sympathetic because he is just naive and innocent and doesn't really know. He's like throwing the flowers in the water and they're floating, so he grabs the girl and throws her in and she sinks.
Hmm. Well, total. I don't. This is one of those things, interestingly too, where some people would say, "Oh, this was totally inspired by this," but I'm not sure if I would say for certain. But I totally saw similarities between uh the monster Frankenstein and, oh man, can't think of his name, but you're familiar with the story of Mice and Men.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Totally saw that when he started playing with the little girl. I was just like, oh man, this is, I don't know if of Mice and Men took a page out of this book or what, but so many similarities right now.
Yeah, that's quite possible. And even things too, like Michael Myers.
Hmm.
Like there's a lot of times where people talk about like, is Michael Myers even fully aware of what he was doing?
Yeah.
Because, he had mental issues and was in a psych ward from like the age of 8 or something like that on. Is he fully even aware of what's going on? But yeah, all that can probably be derived from this movie. But yeah, an easy 5 out of 5 for me, and the most enjoyable one we've watched so far.
Hmm.
So we got one next time that I actually haven't seen before. I've seen parts of it, and that's the original House of Wax.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, which I believe was one of your picks.
Um, I think
Or a
so.
suggestions.
Suggestion. Yeah, I think I may have seen it. I've seen one of these, and I can't remember if this is it. Actually, I'm pulling up the list of what
I was
we.
gonna say, I know there's a couple House of Wax movies.
Yeah.
We're not watching the remake with Paris Hilton. I can tell you that. There's one from 1953, which is the one we were going to be watching, but which was a remake of the 1933 Mystery at the Wax Museum.
Rock.
But come by next time, we'll be continuing on with our marathon, moving into the 1950s. So until then, as always, be kind and rewind.